Hey everybody, this video is all about historical fiction. I want to inspire you to pick up a book that just takes you to a time, a place, and tells you an amazing story about some amazing people. I hope this historical fiction will make it from my shelves to your TBR. So let's get started. Hi everybody, and welcome back to my channel. It's Russell with Ink and Paper Blog. How are you all doing today? First and foremost, I want to send out all of my positive thoughts and well wishes to the people in Northern California that have been affected by the wildfires that are going on. They are just ravaging Northern California right now. I am in a location where I have the smoke in the air, the ash, but the fires are not really near where I'm living. But I do have some friends who have been evacuated, and I know that there are two not that far from where I live. So if you have been affected, I'm sending you all my positive thoughts and warm, I hope you're safe, I hope you're healthy, and I hope everything will eventually, very soon, get wrapped up. As always, I always wish that you guys are healthy and safe, and I hope that you guys are dealing with this pandemic, and of course, I hope you guys are reading some amazing books. So today's video was actually inspired by the fact that a pre-order of a book arrived from one of my favorite authors, and it is historical fiction, and I thought when it arrived, and I was so excited for it, that it would be a good topic for an entire video. So today I'm going to talk to you guys about some of the historical fiction that is on my shelves so that you guys can go ahead and add them to your TBR. Now, let's start with the fact that historical fiction is going to be defined differently by everybody. For me, it usually means that it's centered around a certain time or event in history. I also think historical fiction can be the story of a family through sort of like a family saga through many generations. I think that in a certain country or city, or while dealing with, background or religion or something like that. So these books, as I talk about them, you might say, that doesn't sound like historical fiction to me, but that's okay. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't read the book. But if you do have some amazing historical fiction recommendations, please put it down in the notes below. So as always, get out your pen, get out your paper, get out your Goodreads, however you keep track of your TBR. If you are so able, order some of these books from your local independent bookstore, or if you're a library user, get your library on it so you can have your hands on these books as soon as possible. So let's start with the book that inspired this entire video. Almost went overboard. And that is Cher and Major Whittlesey by Kathleen Rooney, out now from Penguin. Now, Kathleen Rooney wrote the book Lillian Boxfish Takes a Walk, which I absolutely adored a few years ago. And this is a very different book. This is the story of two different people during war. Well, I say people, two different heroes. One is Cher, who is a messenger pigeon who has his own perspective, her own perspective, misgendered in the Smithsonian, I learned in the first few pages. She is a messenger pigeon. She's going to tell her own story about a battle that occurs in the forests of France. And it's also going to have to do with Major Whittlesey and his involvement in that same battle, and how their stories come together, and how this event affects both of their lives. Now, Kathleen Rooney is one of my favorite people. She is a totally amazing person. She's been doing all this stuff on her Twitter and Instagram and Facebook regarding pigeons, and it has just been lovely. If you are in the Chicago area where Kathleen lives, she has been doing a whole thing where she's going to all the local independent bookstores and signing copies of this book. So highly recommend, if you're in that area and you think this book sounds up to you, and it should be on your TBR, go get it, because you may have a signed copy sitting in a Chicago bookstore waiting for you. So that is Cher and Major Whittlesey by Kathleen Rooney, out now from Penguin. I should say that all of these books, I believe, are out now, other than one at the end that comes out next month. So you can get your hands on all of these. We're going to stay within the World Wars, and we're going to talk about We Must Be Brave by Frances Liardet, out from Putnam Books, set in December of 1940. This is the story of a town in England, Southampton, where bombs are falling, they're being bombed by the Germans, and people are being forced to flee. Our main character finds a young girl who has been left utterly alone, takes her with her, and brings her into her family. Now, she is newly wedded. They don't have children. They really had no plans to have children. However, this young girl sort of comes into their life, bringing back history, bringing about memories, but also sort of completing their family. But we all know that this young girl does not belong to them, and that's going to cause issues when you have to think about the fact that you have grown attached to someone that may have to go somewhere else eventually. So that's We Must Be Brave by Frances Liardet, out from Putnam. You can get your hands on this one right now. Now we're going to go to the other side of the world, to 1920s Australia, with Lost Autumn by Mary Rose MacColl, out also from Putnam Books. So this is one of those historical fictions where half of it is set, you know, in the 1920s, and then half of it is set decades later as those stories from the 1920s come to the forefront. So our main character, Maddie, is a young girl. She's 17 in the 1920s, and she has been brought on a train that is going to be transversing Australia with Prince Edward, the Duke of Wales, on the train. And it's all about sort of the stuff that goes on that trip. Decades later, there's a newspaper writer, a reporter, who's really investigating the reclusive writer M.A. Bright. And in doing so, Maddie is brought back into it, and we sort of get the history, and things come up about that trip and how that trip affected who she winds up being. I love books that sort of split the narrative like that. I like that technique, so I think that this works really well, and hopefully you guys still consider that historical fiction, because I definitely feel like it is. So that's Lost Autumn by Mary Rose MacColl, and this is out again from Putnam Books. Okay, now we're going to go to Uganda. 1750s Uganda, if I'm not mistaken, and that is Kintu by Jennifer Nansubuga Makumbi, and this is out now from Transit Books. In the UK, it has a different publisher and a different cover, so but I know it's available in both sections of the world. Kintu is a family saga set in the 1750s. Our main character starts with Kintu Kita, who is going across Uganda to pledge his allegiance to this new, what is it called? The new leader of a group that's taken over. And along that trip, he winds up sort of falling into a curse that affects his family for decades and decades. And it's one of those books where you follow the families and the decisions and how this sort of event affects all of the people that follow. Now, this book was loved by my friend Denise. This book was just done as a sort of read-along by Dee Dee over at Brown Girl Reading, and she is phenomenal. She is the reviewer and book discusser. She's just amazing, and she's everything I wish I could be. So if you need more inspiration or want to follow some of the discussions she's had on this book, I highly recommend you check her out. She doesn't need any help from me because she's phenomenal. But that is Kintu by Jennifer Nansubuga Makumbi, and this is out from Transit Books. So whenever I try to say the middle name there, I always transcribe the S and the N in my head, and I always want to say Nas-n instead of Nans. Isn't that interesting sometimes how your brain just plays with you? But I highly recommend that if you just want to dive into a long developed, wonderful family saga. Next, we're going to go to some translated literature because it is Women in Translation Month, and we're going to talk about At the Wolf's Table by Rosella Postorino, and this is translated from the Italian by Leah Janeczko, and I apologize, my Polish last names are a very big struggle. It has a CZKO at the end of it, and that sound in my mouth. This tells the story of a group of women who are brought in daily for multiple meals to test the food before Adolf Hitler eats it to make sure that it is not poisoned. That is sort of the premise of this book, but it's really about the relationships of these women, their history, and also what they are hiding to protect their families currently. It becomes a big sort of discussion of friendship, female friendship, and the secrets that have to be kept, and how Nazi Germany and what it made women do just to sort of protect their lives and their loved ones. So again, this is At the Wolf's Table by Rosella Postorino, translated from the Italian by Leah Gincosi, and this is out from Flatiron Books. You guys can get your hands on it. Highly recommend it. I really liked that one. The next book I read last year, and I still think of it so fondly, and that's The Last Train to London by Meg Wyatt Clayton, out from Harper Books. Now, again, this is set during World War II, just before World War II, and it's the story of a woman who makes it her sole mission to get as many children out of Nazi Germany, Jewish children out of Nazi Germany, as she absolutely can. It also tells the tale of a young boy, a Jewish boy, whose family is sort of forced into hiding and forced into trying to figure out a way to survive because of what happens to them in Austria. And what the two stories sort of wind up coming together. But this is the story of the people who really sort of had to become heroes because they make these decisions. And, you know, a lot of countries after a while didn't want to take any more immigrants because there was such an influx of Jewish people trying to get out of Austria and Germany and flee the Nazis. And things came down, and people that were trying to save these children had many obstacles to get over. This book is a bit of a chunkster, but I flew through it. I think all of the characters are phenomenal, and I really, really loved the story. So that's The Last Train to London by Meg Wyatt Clayton, out from Harper Books. Okay, next we're going to go to the early 1900s United States, and we're going to talk about The Women of Copper Country by Mary Doria Russell. Now, Mary Doria Russell has written many, many books, and if you like historical fiction but you'd rather be in the Midwest, she has two great books about the OK Corral. About Doc Hollywood, and Epitaph, which is a story of the OK Corral. And if you would rather go there historical fiction-wise, recommend you do. I think you'll absolutely love those. But this book is actually set in 1913 in Calumet, Michigan, and is the story of a copper mine. Now, Calumet is a city or a town totally just in existence for this major corporation and its running of this copper mine. And what happens, sort of the thing that spawns the narrative, is that a man is killed because of the conditions, and a young woman named Annie decides she's going to try to unionize the workers. And of course, it becomes a fight between this corporation and probably one of the most villainous people that I have read about in literature, based on a real person, that's just awful. He does not think about people at all, has no humanity. It is all about the bottom line. And this is the story of Annie and sort of the development of the unions in this country, and how Mary does a great job of bringing together sort of the historical relevance of unionizing and making it a very personal story as well. It is so well researched, so you'll learn a ton of stuff from this, but you'll also be totally bought in. And it is sad, and it is hopeful, and there's just a lot that goes into this book. But I will say, I mean, it's a struggle, and things happen to these poor people. And so that's The Women of Copper Country, The Women of the Copper Country by Mary Doria Russell, and this is out from Atria Books. You can get your hands on it right now. Also highly recommend Doc and Epitaph if you're looking for more of a Western historical fiction. Now, this book just came out. I talked about it actually in a video not that long ago, but I just got my copy from the publisher, and that's The Orphan Collector by Ellen Marie Wiseman. This is out from Kensington Books. This is the story set around the early 1900s, 1918 in Philadelphia, set around the time of the Spanish influenza. We have a young girl whose parents have passed, and she is taken on trying to take care of her two younger brothers. So she leaves the house in an attempt to figure out a way to take care of them. What can she do? What job can she get? How is she going to take care of her brothers? The second half of the story is of a woman who has lost a baby and decides that what she's going to do is she's going to do something for all of the orphans because of the Spanish influenza, and she winds up taking these two young boys away. The young girl does not realize that when she gets home, her brothers will be missing, and the stories sort of intertwined. One woman trying to help children, maybe with good intentions, but with poor execution, and a young girl searching for her family. That's The Orphan Collector by Ellen Marie Wiseman, out now from Kensington Books. Okay, the only book that isn't out now, and the last book that I'm going to tell you about, because it comes out next month, is The Exiles by Christina Baker Klein. Now, Christina Baker Klein does not need any introduction. Orphan Train, which I believe is her last novel, was a humongous success. But this one sounds actually really interesting, and it's set in, well, it's set in Australia, but kind of. So this is the story of a young girl, and it is in the beginning of, let me see if I can figure out. I think it's like in the 1800s. So the end of the mid 1800s or so. She's a young girl. She works in a household, and she winds up getting pregnant because of an affair she has with one of the sons in the household. She is then sort of punished by being put in prison, and then she is exiled to a camp or a prison in Australia. And she's put on sort of a repurposed slave ship, and she knows she's going to wind up having her baby on that ship. And this is the story of her transversing across the ocean to Australia. And on that ship, she meets a young woman who has been sentenced. God, I couldn't figure out what that word was for a minute. She was sentenced to 7 years for stealing a silver spoon, and she has a lot of abilities with sort of helping women have children and sort of herbal remedies and all of that, and sort of they sort of come together as a friendship. Now in Australia has as you guys know, has a huge Aboriginal population. The indigenous people were there, and the English just pushed them out. So there is another story of a young woman from one of those groups of people that was pushed out, an Aboriginal woman who was pushed out and she, I'm gonna just quote this because I want to make sure I get it right. It says, by the time the Media arrives, many Aborigines have been forcibly relocated, and their land is seized by white colonists. One of these relocated people is Mathina, the orphan daughter of the chief of the Loreen tribe, who has been taken in on the whim by a new governor of the Van Diemen's Land. Now, Van Diemen's Land is what this prison in Australia is called. And what happens is all of these stories, of course, will come together. I think that's a unique perspective. I haven't read many books like this from the perspective of women being sent to this colony. I think it's going to be very interesting. I know Christina Baker Klein does an amazing amount of research, so I'm super excited to get to this one. So that's, again, The Exiles by Christina Baker Klein. This is out in September from William Morrow Books. You'll be able to get your hands on it. I hope that every single one of these books winds up on your TBR, and I hope they all sound amazing to you. If you guys have recommendations of other historical fictions for the watchers of this video, please put them in the comments down below. As always, if you're a return subscriber, I could not do this without you. If you are new to my channel, I hope you like what you saw. I hope you click subscribe and you give this video a thumbs up. So it is a Saturday, and clearly I am having a hard time talking today. As always, I wish you guys to read globally, shop locally. Still having trouble speaking, and I wish you happy reading. Until next time, I'll see you later. Bye.